Hi, and welcome to our Sunday Talks by Co-Church. I'm here in the offices of Durban University of Technology, or DUT, and I'm here because we're taking our Sunday Talks on the road because we want to put a spotlight on certain incredible initiatives that are taking place in our region. I'm here because I'm going to have a conversation with Wandile Mtiani.
My name is Wandile Mtiani. I am a 23-year-old Masters of Architecture student studying at Andrews University in the United States. I grew up in an informal settlement, or what is often referred to as a shantytown in Durban, South Africa. Growing up, I saw how my dad couldn't get a job simply because we didn't have a permanent address. I quickly realized that the core of so many problems within my community was home. Like Churchill best put it, we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us.
You know what I'm saying? Good game, man.
Apartheid architecture pushed a certain group of people into the worst land that was isolated from opportunity and resources, causing families to spend 40% of their income on commuting to work for the apartheid government, which was based in the city. They were provided housing within communities that had been purposely designed to prevent social interaction and economic opportunities. And this stripped away the humanity of the people.
Wandile, first of all, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
It is very cool that we get to have this conversation. I don't know you very well, and so this conversation is me getting to know you and everything of what you're a part of. And for people listening, it's their opportunity to hear some more. Can we just start right at the basics, right at the beginning? Would you mind just letting us know a little bit of who you are and your story?
100%. Thank you for having me, man. Excited to be here. My name is Wandile Mtiani. I am from Durban, South Africa. I was actually born in Phoenix, in Phoenix Clinic. Grew up in number of township informal settlements and suburbs in Durban, from Mawoti, Inanda, Guamash, Nduzuma, Reservoir Hills, Southgate, Phoenix, all of these places. So I'm a true Durbanite. And from a very young age, I realized that at the core and of all problems within low-income communities or informal settlements was the lack of dignified housing.
Yeah, sure.
Because without a house, you don't have a physical address.
Yep.
Without a physical address, you can apply for a job. Without a job, you can't pay to buy a house. So then the cycle of poverty happens.
Yeah.
Same thing with you go to school, but you come back, you don't have a space, a place to be able to do your homework.
Yeah.
Safety. So it affects education and then safety. Like you are constantly playing hide and seek with droplets of rain when it's when it rains, or someone could just kick the door.
Yeah.
And rape and all these things. So when you start understanding these different layers and you realize the significance and the importance of dignified, affordable housing, you realize how important it is. So in many ways, I've dedicated my life to trying to solve some of that problems through architecture and design and working with communities. And I run an organization called Ubuntu Design Group that does that. Had the privilege of, I studied high school in Zimbabwe and learned building. And I studied my undergrad and master's at Andrews University in Michigan to learn architecture. so that I could learn from already developed countries, like how did they do it, right? And bring it back to South Africa. That's why I'm here now, trying to continue developing
Yeah.
and using architecture as a vehicle to enhance communities.
Wandile, if I could ask you from your perspective, we are both South African. We would have grown up in very different worlds.
100%.
Same country, different worlds.
Yeah.
I grew up for most of my early childhood up until the age of 14 in apartheid.
100%.
And so even when you start to use terminology like township or informal settlement,
Yeah.
for many of us here in South Africa, we'll understand what that is.
Yeah.
But do we actually really understand what that is kind of my thought process. Would you mind, from your perspective, just talking a little bit around what are townships and informal settlements?
Great question. So townships are sort of labor camps that were built by the apartheid government to place, black people, and I think this was 1940s act to move black people. I think it's just called the Group Areas Act, I think 1948, to these particular places, and they were designed strategically to be around 40 kilometers away from town. There were 40 square meter homes for the most part, and which then forced people to spend 40% of their income commuting to town and back. So it was something which is now, in retrospect, looked at as the 40-40 rule. But they were designed to be, just labor camps and devoid of economic opportunities, devoid of gathering spaces, because what that did was it would have the political implication if people gathered and revolted against sort of like the minority rule, or people were able to develop thriving communities which made them independent, which also didn't work for the apartheid regime. So keep them dependent on you. Another thing that they did was, in town where people worked, people had to carry passports. So like the same, thing you need to go to Australia, but you needed it to get to town.
Yeah.
And right next to where sort of the factories where black men worked as labor, they would build giant beer halls so that they would, at the end of the month, get paid that little stipend and go and then use it to drink. I mean, these guys are already emasculated, they're already frustrated, they feel like peasants in their own country, and they can't really stand up to the regime because these guys have guns and etc. So they're constantly humiliated in front of their families. So it makes sense why they would go and drink to sort of cope through that. So what they do when they go and drink, it causes them to even be more poor, so they can never develop their communities. So that's what townships are. But the thing is, some 26 years post-apartheid, I was born 3 months before Nelson Mandela became president, just 3 months before apartheid ended. 26 years later, our parents are still spending 40% of their income commuting, because it's not like town moved closer when the laws changed. The laws may have changed, but the buildings didn't. So now the challenge is, like, how do we develop economic opportunities within townships? How do we help develop gathering and public spaces within township? How do we make them livable, dignified, safe, inhabitable? And those are some of the challenges I'm looking to hopefully solve within architecture.
Where do you think, for you, that passion for design, architecture, space started to happen?
It's a good question. Growing up when I was living in one of the informal settlements, Guamamba, so it's called. I just actually reconnected with one of my friends from there. There was 3 of us. We would, our houses were too small to play house in, but like children around the world, love to play house, and we were no different. The only challenge was the house was too small. So whenever a new member of the community would come in, the community would come together and help them build their own house, right? So we sort of learned from our parents how to be resourceful and how to be creative. So we would all bring together our scrap metals and leftover materials, and would build a small playhouse, and it would fall on us, and we'd build it again, and eventually it would stand, and then one will run and go buy rice and another beans, and no, sorry, actually steal rice at home, steal beans, steal some spices. We'd cook. You know, in retrospect, these were not the most fire-safe things to do, but the food tasted good, and we'd cook in our playhouses, and so that's where it's all started to me. And that's made our childhood. We didn't have like the fanciest toys. We didn't have PS5 and all that good stuff. But that's like till today, I'm 26 now. That's arguably one of the best times of my life.
Yeah, beautiful.
The creativity, the freedom, just like the genuineness and everything was just simply amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the passion started, but also seeing the challenges that my family, my community faced due to lack of dignified housing and etc. Combined with that, I was like, man, I really want to one day be able to come back and develop my community.
As of this Sunday, which is December 6th, we are 19 days away from Christmas. You heard that right. 19 days until Christmas. What does Christmas mean to you? I think of my earliest childhood memories, and Christmas for me revolves around one emotion: anticipation. From the moment we finished school to all of the events that would consistently take place throughout that time of the year, the anticipation was building. When the shops used to change the decorations, my birthday always falls in December, and so that compounds the sense of anticipation. And it's all building up to reach a peak on December 24th, Christmas Eve, where the challenge was always, can we stay up throughout the night? And we failed every single time. Now, the anticipation that I was feeling at that time, it centered around gifts. It's right to say, gifts are the one thing that I was consumed by at that time. And I wasn't following Jesus as a young person, and so what else would I be anticipating? But now, life has changed. Context has absolutely changed for me personally, but there is still anticipation. For me, I came into a relationship with Jesus. And so now when it comes to Christmas in my context, the anticipation that I have centers around Him. Because we would believe that Christmas, as much as we love family and celebration and the decorations and giving and receiving gifts, the greatest gift that was ever given to mankind for all time is Jesus. And this time of the year is about the celebration of His arrival. It is the arrival. Have you ever heard of the word Advent? You may have. I have, but I had never really looked too much into it. The word Advent literally means the arrival. And so the anticipation that you and I can have and should have center around the greatest gift, and His name is Jesus. We want to go on an Advent journey, and we want to ask you to participate with us. Perhaps, like me, you've never really been intentional and active about your Advent journey. Well, this could mark a change for you, because we want to speak about this gift and what it brings into our life. So typically, this time of the year, the school year is coming to an end, and it's always the end of year concerts and celebrations. When I was in pre-primary, my final year before going to primary school, I had the prestigious position of playing a key role in the nativity play at my pre-primary school. I've got to be honest, I was feeling good about myself because there seems to have been an escalation in my acting career, because just the year prior, I was just a barn animal. No offense to anybody who's ever played barn animals in the nativity play, but we all know that to stand there and kind of moo doesn't take that much creativity. But now, in my final year of pre-primary, here I am playing Joseph. Joseph, who is the father of the greatest gift ever given to humanity. He is the father of Jesus. And so I remember in this particular year, there was a stage set before all of the parents, and it was a packed house. There was hay covering the stage, and the scene was myself and Mary. We had to walk around the stage, and we were knocking on ends to find out whether there was room, because here is this imminent child. And so we are walking and knocking and walking and knocking, and I am so engrossed in my role. I mean, I'd taken on the persona of Joseph, set in the Middle East at that time, and I'm cruising around so confident I am killing this role. And then all of a sudden, I literally disappear into the stage. Like, honestly, up to my neck, I have fallen down a hole because somebody had covered this hole in hay, and I had stepped straight into it and disappeared. And so now the show must go on, obviously. Mary is continuing in her role, and she has got me by the shoulders. She's trying to pull me out. I'm trying to climb out. Everyone in the audience is trying to refrain from laughing, but it is no longer an option, because bursts of rapturous laughter start to ring out throughout the audience. And eventually, I climb out of that and continue in my performance. On the way home, I would say that it was an Oscar-worthy performance, and I love the fact that I just plowed right on through the whole incident. Now, I look back on that situation, and at the time, let me tell you, I was not laughing, but I think about it now and it brings me joy. I want to ask you, when was the last time you had a genuine, deep belly laugh? You know, that laughter where tears are rolling down your cheeks, that laughter that comes from within you and your whole body is shaking. We actually had such a good laugh just the other day, and it was about an incident that wasn't entirely funny at the time, but it's amazing how mood and context brought something to light, and Tam and I just had the best laugh together. When I think about laughter, I think about joy. And when I think about Jesus and his imminent arrival, joy is something that is a key component that this gift brings into our life. Now, I would know that 2020, it has been one of those years where perhaps we couldn't use the word joy or laughter to best describe it. I'll be honest with you, there have been times, and quite recently actually, where I haven't felt joy at all. I've felt a deep sadness. I've felt a darkness and a heaviness. And so what do we do in those times? See, we tend to live defined circumstantially. And what I mean by that is that when there is so much going on around us, we can allow that to affect what is going on the inside of us. And we would know it to be true for many people. This year has been full of uncertainty and disruption. It's brought health challenges and economic challenges, and it has just been chaos. So can we have joy in the midst of external circumstances that shouldn't be bringing about any laughter in our life? My belief is that joy comes from a place of faith that ultimately resonates on the inside of us, as opposed to it being drawn from what is going on around us. And so this gift of Jesus, He is the one that brings joy. I want to read to you a quote from G.K. Chesterton, who was a theologian. And he says this: "Joy is the gigantic secret weapon of the Christian." Could you say that joy is present in your life right now? For me, like I've said, there have been moments when it's been missing. So what do we do in those times? Where does joy come from? How do we continually see it being outworked in our life? We're talking about the Advent, and the advent of Christ, the coming of the King of Kings, the great arrival that is God Himself entering into the very fabric of humanity. Jesus. Who is Jesus? See, it's a pivotal question to ask ourselves, particularly in this time of the year. Because if we're speaking about joy and we're speaking about it coming from a place that is not externally sourced, it can only come by one who is our creator. That God, being the one who created us, is the one who gives us the ability to draw from a deep well within us that joy might come to the surface. And so who is Jesus? In Matthew chapter 1, verse 20. "But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream." This is Joseph, the character who I played in my pre-primary school play. "And said, 'Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins.' And all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet." Verse 23. Listen to this. In speaking about who is Jesus, "The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel." Emmanuel. Emmanuel literally means God is with us. You see, Jesus, this great arrival, the advent of Christ, the greatest gift ever given, is God with us. God with us in the valleys, God with us on the mountaintop, God with us in the journey in between, God with us. And by Him, we have joy. In Psalm 30, in verse 4, "Sing the praises of the Lord, you faithful people. Praise His holy name. For His anger only lasts a moment, but His favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning." This season of life, you may be currently in a tough, weary, sad, dark time. And I want to speak that word over your life, that weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. Over a period of time, we've been speaking about a couple that we find in our Bibles, and their names are Abraham and Sarah. And Abraham, he is defined by two words, faith and friendship, and both in relation to God. Abraham is actually called by God to go on this journey of uncertainty. But in the midst of the calling by God to Abraham, God gives Abraham a promise. And the promise is that he is going to be a father of a multitude. And that sounded good at the time of the promise, but as time went on, as years went on, as they as a couple became older in age, the promise didn't come about. And they find themselves in a wilderness season. They find themselves in uncertainty. They find themselves now potentially in moments of despair or frustration or hopelessness. They would find themselves in a dark time, believing in and hoping for this promise, but it is yet to be realized. The beautiful story of Abraham and Sarah, the story of God acting on behalf of people whom he loves, is not just a story for Abraham and Sarah, but in this Christmas time, I want to believe it to be our story as well. That as we might journey in times of uncertainty, as we find ourselves in this period of Advent, in the build-up, this anticipation is rising according to the great gift that is Jesus, that we would actually see joy arriving in our lives. Because it goes on to say this, okay? When Sarah and Abraham had come to that point where ultimately they didn't see how this could come to pass, this promise of them being parents, them bringing life into the world. Genesis 21, after years, verse 1, now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah had bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, and Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. Just think on that for a moment. Receive that right now. God has brought me laughter. And everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said Abraham and Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in my old age. Let me read that verse 6 again to you. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. Martin Luther, he says it like this: you have as much laughter as you have faith. This time, this Advent, this Christmas, it's a time of faith. It's a time of anticipation building to the great arrival, and his name is Jesus. Emmanuel, God with us. God in whom we can look to, God in whom we can abide, God who loves us, God who is faithful to his promise. Joy. Joy is found in Jesus. This gift of life brings joy and laughter and light. And may that be your portion. If there was ever anything to be joyful about, it would be that this gift, which is salvation, comes to us not because we deserve it, nor have we earned it. That this comes because there is a God and he loves us. And despite what might be going on around us, despite whether we have presence coming into our life at this time or not, despite whether there is uncertainty around us, when we choose to look to Christ, when we choose to ponder on this gift, when we choose to remember, to be thankful, to be grateful, joy is what results in our life. And our hope and prayer is that this would be a joyful time for you, even in the midst of everything of what is going on around us. If you want a little laugh, just think about my story once again. Imagine me stuck in that hole and Mary trying to pull me out. But even greater, think on Jesus. Think on the life and love that he brings. Let me finish with Psalm 98. Sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done marvelous things. By his right hand and his holy arm, he has worked salvation. The Lord has made his salvation known and revealed to all nations. And that is Jesus. So we would hope that you stay connected with us on this Advent journey. Next week, we'll be sharing a little bit more about what this gift of Jesus brings into our life, and make the most of what this time is. Let's remember, let's consider, and let's laugh in Jesus' name. So thanks again for connecting with us. Our hope always is that those talks are helpful and inspiring to you, and no doubt you would have enjoyed the conversation with Wandile. If you would like to find out anything about who we are as a church, please visit our website and the details will come up on the screen. And you can email me as well. The email will come straight through to me. We would love to meet you. We'd love to have a chat, and we would love to help you get connected in our community. Be blessed, have an awesome week, and we'll see you soon.